Okay, good morning. Hello. Welcome to the casual start to Wednesday. So I'm going to welcome the people in the room. I'm also going to welcome the people online. And day 2 of Creative Brain Week, a day all about connection. How are we connected? What are we connected to? Are we networked but not connected? Who's not connected to us? And all things connected. Yesterday was an extraordinary day, all about attention. Many takeouts from that, and today follows the same kind of pattern. So we have a casual half hour when we kind of check in with ideas and with people. From 10 till 12, we have 2 hours of presentation, really fantastic series of presenters who will introduce themes that I think will expand throughout the day. From 12 till 1, the living labs, sadly not for you in internet land, but real life, embodied learning, arts, music, and all the good stuff. We'll come back to that later. And then this afternoon, panel discussions around who is paying attention to what. So the Jameel Arts and Health Group in the early part of the afternoon, an extraordinary collaboration that's building between neuroscientists and musicians and medics in the middle of the afternoon, a great session with our associates from the Disrupt Disability Arts Festival towards the end of the day, and we'll end again, as we did yesterday, with the reflection session, a little poetry, a little neuroscience. They fit together so beautifully in Creative Brain Week. So we wanted to start today by checking in with the satellites. So those of you that were here on Monday know that while Creative Brain is going on in Dublin, there is also Creative Brain Week in Cairo, and this is a new little experiment. We will have, by June, 4 different Creative Brain Week satellites. The one in Cairo that's on at the moment, the one in Gaborone in Botswana, which will be the end of May, one in Delhi in India, which Anusha Mohan is part of, Yasoda-Mohan is part of, and one in Brisbane. And so I'm going to invite those people to join us, but because they're really busy people flying around the world, one of them is somewhere on a flight between Delhi and Washington. And so they told me the other week that they decided to talk to each other and they'd made a little presentation. So we might show that first. Thank you. It's not television, it's real life. Oh, hello. Good morning. Good morning, Juanita. Good morning, Kim. How are you?
That's not
Australia?
the presentation, by the way.
I realized. They're real.
Really good.
Very good.
Good evening here from Brisbane.
Very nice to see you. So we're going to talk to you first then, and then we're going to show the video and do it back to front. But such is Creative Brain Week, all about innovation and improvisation. So perhaps you would be so kind as to introduce yourselves. You've got very different sets of skills.
Thank you so much, Dominic. Kim, if it's okay, I'll dive in and get us going.
Absolutely, you go first.
And thank you so much to everyone there in Creative Brain Week. It looks amazing there in Dublin, the program, and also to everybody online. Thank you so much for having us. I'm Juanita Wheeler. Like Kim, I'm based here in Brisbane, Australia. And my skill set or my focus is primarily as a speaker coach, a script writer, a speech writer, and an events coordinator. I'm also the executive director of TEDx Brisbane. So I've coached and trained over 100 TEDx speakers to take their world-changing, game-changing ideas and translate them to the stage. And so I'm very, very excited about bringing that skill set to the Creative Brain Week here in Australia for the first time ever. And Kim, shall I hand over?
Juanita, you know, I have a fabulous co-creator, and I was really pleased when I've learned that Juanita was in Brisbane, and I reached out to her immediately when I thought about bringing Creative Brain Week to Australia. So I'm Kim. I'm one of the Atlantic Fellow for Equity in Brain Health from the last year cohort, 2023-24. I'm based in Brisbane. My background is in economics, but I'm also have a development and community development background. And at the moment, I'm a senior lecturer at the University of Queensland. So I'm really, really excited to be part of this and bringing Creative Brain Week to Brisbane this year.
So Kim, we have an events producer, Juanita. We have a person who's skilled at communicating. We have you as a researcher and economist looking at health and neuroscience of health and brain health. What do you hope to do together in Brisbane? What's your ambition with Creative Brain Week?
You want to tackle that, Juanita?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the question, Dominic. I think primarily to start with is to create that sense of connection and to actually build a creative brain, a very intentional creative brain week community here in Brisbane. I think from our initial research looking at what we will stick in the program, it is very clear that there are some amazing things that are taking place here in neuroscience, in research, in health policy, in education, in innovation. But to some extent, we haven't had the beauty of having a Creative Brain Week event here in Australia yet. So there is a siloing happening. So people are doing amazing things, but not necessarily everyone is connected and knows what everyone else is doing. So I think first and foremost, our goal is to bring these amazing and talented and inspiring people together, as well as the people who have lived experience in these fields or whose lives are impacted by this work, find out what connections are already in place. Maybe they're really well-kept secrets and we just don't know about them, and let's celebrate them. What connections could be in place given the opportunity? Who's talking to who isn't talking to who, and how can we nurture and support and amplify the great work that is already taking place?
Sounds fantastic. Kim, is there anything that you might add to that? Or how are you going to go about making, what's the format that you're hoping for in Brisbane?
For in Brisbane would be potentially 3 days, 3 separate half day in Brisbane at 3 different events. So at the moment, we will have Queensland Brain Institute, which is one of the premier research institute based at the University of Queensland and specialized in brain and neuroscience. The other venue that we're really interested in involving is the Gallery of Modern Art, which is based on the Brisbane Culture Precinct here. And one of the very major programs that they've been developing in the past few years is actually a museum for people with dementia. And one of the curator is actually a Churchill Fellow, and she's very excited to potentially push this forward and collaborate with us as a premier partner for this year. And the third one, hopefully, will be at Griffith University. Because they do have an innovation center and linked to health, and they do amazing work related to connecting the brain with on the body movement. So we hope that during the 3 days or different events, the different organization can actually showcase their work, showcase their best talent, but also at the same time show the community and involve the community around the location to demonstrate the linkage and the connection that potentially can be made or will be strengthened.
Fantastic. It's such a nice mix across silos, across forms of department disciplines, across venues. Juanita, likely dates, possible dates?
We're working at the moment with, you can imagine, it would have been one thing to get one venue and to agree to a week. We didn't want to do anything so simple because we believe that place is really, really important. So we're trying to get 3 different, very busy, very dynamic venues and departments to agree on the same week. I'd put my money on early June.
So firstly, I want to thank you for sharing something that's still in development that you're working on. It echoes so much of our own experience in Dublin. What we really love, though, is that each of these is thematically connected and locally informed. And that works both ways. So there are things that, by talking to you every week, which is what I do, we are learning from the conversations with you. So I've got one last question, and then we're going to move seamlessly from Brisbane to Delhi. So Kim first. Kim, is there anything that surprised you in developing this? Is there anything that's kind of like, oh, I didn't think of that?
surprising me probably is the level of excitement that we've seen so far with all the people we reach out to and introduce the concept. And as Juanita said, although there's a lot of great work done in Brisbane, a lot of the work has been done in silo. But when you start to talk about, bringing neuroscientists to clinician, to healthcare professional and decision maker and artist to the room, everyone start to say, wow, is that possible? And, there's a sense of excitement and seeing something new, see a new possibility. So that's definitely surprised me, but also give us a lot of hope that by bringing this Creative Brain Week to Brisbane, we will have a really great opportunity to push forward the collaboration and nurture a very new way of thinking about brain health.
Fantastic. And Juanita, have you got any final words for Dublin?
If you are watching and you are anywhere near Brisbane, Australia, we would love to have you come and join us. We're very excited about being part of this, as you described it, Dominic, this experiment of having the satellite events. We think it is going to be something that's going to, we hope, contribute to the global community in the long term. But in this year, I think it is going to do wonderful and exciting things to create new connections here in Australia in the creative brain community.
So I'd like to thank you both for joining us. What we're going to do now is make a link, because Kim and Jayashree Dasgupta, who's part with Anusha of the team in Delhi, made this little short conversation between the two of them. Thank you very much for joining us late at night in Brisbane. And while we move over technically from one thing to another, if you want to know more, then you can find out about the satellites at creativebrainweek.com. If you look at creativebrainweek.com and then go to the satellites, there are links there to the 4 of them. So easy enough to find. We good? Yeah.
Good morning, Dublin. We're connecting with you from India and Australia for Creative Brain Week 2024. My name is Kim, and I'm a senior economist at the University of Queensland. I call it the Creative Brain Week in Brisbane, Australia, alongside Juanita, a Global Atlantic Fellow for Social Equity, and she's also an Executive Director of Tex Brisbane. So I'd like to introduce you to Jayashree, who co-leads Creative Brain Week in India.
Hi, I'm an adjunct professor at Chitkara University and the co-founder of Samvedna Care in India. And along with my colleague Anusha, we're developing a satellite program in India for the Creative Brain Week.
So today's theme of Creative Brain Week is connection. And we would like to share some of the information about the 2 satellite events that we have. They are miles apart, yet geographically connected in the Asia-Pacific region.
Yeah, but we also spent an amazing year together on the fellowship at GBSI. And I think that's why we're always going to remain connected through that shared experience. And in fact, I'm reminded of something my art teacher once said, that no matter where you go, if you remember your roots, you remain connected. So definitely our connected GBHI is going to keep us connected.
We are always connected. So Anusha, Jayashree, and I connected personally through GBHI, so 3 of us. But with Juanita, the amazing thing is connecting with us through the Atlantic Fellowship Program. And after I came back from Dublin to Brisbane, I realized that we had a few Atlantic Fellows also living in Brisbane. And
yeah, of course, we're connected by technology. So that's what's making this conversation across the seas possible. So that's absolutely fantastic.
It is amazing. And it was really interesting because when we are preparing for this talk today and share with you, we just keep pondering, one of the questions that we have about connection is what type of connection that people tend to ignore. We talk a lot about how people connect and who people connect to, but we tend to ignore certain connection. So that actually led Juanita and I to think about the goal of our event in Brisbane, how we can create a creative brain community and break the silo. And when I talked to Jayashree, it turned out that India Creative Brain Week also share this goal.
Right. So one of the things that we've been thinking about is, why do silos exist? And one of the reasons is often that we're from diverse backgrounds or disciplines and locations. So we tend to naturally sort ourselves into groups because that's what's comfortable. But whilst there may be interdisciplinary differences or different methodologies and approaches and goals, it's really interesting to think about how we can build these bridges through events like Creative Brain Week. So tell us a bit more about your event.
So for Creative Brain Week Brisbane, we want to bring together individuals and representative organizations, including neuroscientists, artists, educationalists, policymakers, innovators, and to have them recognize themselves as a creative brain community here in Brisbane and in Australia as well. So our event will take place over 3 salons in early June, and each salon will be about 3 hours in duration. So our aim is to maximize the number of people who can attend. And when we think about that, we want to offer in different dates and different time, and as well as different venue. So you can start registering your interest for the Brisbane event on Creative Brain Week app website. And about Jayashree event.
So our event actually has some similar goals, but we're focusing on building a community of practice. And this is going to be through a day-long multi-stakeholder participatory co-development workshop on Brain Health India. And we'll be inviting people from different disciplines, neuroscientists, people from the field of education, creative arts, caregivers, people with lived experience, policymakers, to join us for this conversation together and really see what we can do collaboratively going forward. And this event is going to be held in Delhi on May 3rd at the India Habitat Centre, which is a cultural hub in Delhi. And we're also developing a public engagement event, which will most likely be held in Delhi as well. And if you're interested to attend or know more about this, you can register your interest on the Creative Brain Week website.
Oh, that sounds absolutely amazing. I definitely registered my interest. And one other thing, it seems that we really have common in our satellite event about building connections. And although our method might be really different, really our common goal for this event and potentially in the future will be how to break silo and work together more fluidly. And for us, this event might be the first step toward building a regional connection in science, technologies, and the arts for brain health in the Asia Pacific.
Absolutely, and I think that's really exciting. So thanks a lot to Dominic Campbell and the entire team, as well as the Atlantic Institute and GBHI community, and all the other contributors who make this event possible. And we're really very excited to be part of this journey.
And thank you all. And I wish you a very happy and excited week with Creative Brain Week. And on the best now from India and Australia.
And then they disappear. Hello again. So we have, I'm here with Anusha Yasoda-Mohan, who is part of the group developing Delhi. We have the disadvantage of being in the real world, whereas they had the advantage of spending 4 hours making a 6-hour video, which is perfect. So Kim, we love it. I have very little time because we can change silos, we can change the relationships between people, we can do nothing about the reality of 24 hours in a day. So I'm going to ask you, when you are putting together a Creative Brain Week in Delhi, and you move between Delhi and here, you move between India and here, what's significantly different in your thinking about putting a Creative Brain Week?
I think what we don't understand in India, and the reason for the co-development workshop, is what is brain health in India means. And I think for someone like me who's sort of seen brain health practices, and especially with my 1-year fellowship in GBHI, looking at what's happening in Mesa, what's happening in Beaumont, what's happening in all these different places, we don't know if things like this is going on in India. we know that there's a lot, and there's a big discrepancy. And because India is a huge country with 1 billion people, there's a lot of discrepancy and a lot of geographical inequities with services and even with modernization of thought processes, which are obviously different in urban and rural areas, but also between different geographical locations in India. And one of the reasons that we're having this in Delhi is because most of brain health practices are concentrated in the south, and we actually wanted to pull it out geographically and have people move to another location. So that is actually very different in India as well. And one of the other things is this is sort of a catapult approach, as we'd like to think about it, is because we're kind of pulling back a step to bring people together, people who are already working in this field but probably don't call it brain health. So one of the people I spoke to are doing it's called Villipattu, which means song through stories, and it's a very interesting approach where they go out to the villages, they do song through stories about dementia in villages, in a village, and then they follow it up with a survey, which I thought was a very, very interesting approach. Yeah. So there are approaches like these which are very different from what I've seen here in Dublin, but I think which are very locally relevant. So there are a lot of cultural differences in what people talk about brain health and how they approach it.
I'm still trying to get my head around 1 billion people.
Yeah.
It's like, we think working in Ireland is complicated because there are about, 5 to 8 million, depending on how you cut it. We think it's very far going to, West Kerry, and how do you make a service that happens in Carrigsaveen or West Cork? But it's a whole different level of complicated. So kind of final question is, where do you start? Or have you already started? You are already started. But what's next?
Well, I think that's the reason for the one-day workshop. And we kind of took a step away from, okay, let's just go and implement, but rather let's talk about what brain health looks like. And that's why I'd like to call it a catapult approach, that maybe Creative Brain Week, what does Creative Brain Week look like in India? Who are the stakeholders? And as Jayashree said, inviting people who are in the medical world, the caregivers and different stakeholders to come together to see what this actually means in India is the first step. So that's where we're at. So we're talking to people, and people are very excited. And to mirror and to kind of sound back what Kim told us, people are very excited about breaking silos and bringing people together. And so we've definitely had a lot of interest locally to come and join this event and sort of, grow Creative Brain Week in India from its roots. So that's what this is going to be about.
So I want to thank Anusha, I want to thank Kim, Juanita, Jayashree somewhere up in the ether for joining us today. I also want to thank and recognize your courage in trying something that nobody else has really tried before, and I'm very excited to be with you on the journey. I personally, if you're a satellite, I feel a little bit like the mothership. So good luck, and thank you.
Thank you, Dominic.
So time is never our friend, and I'm going to move swiftly on if you'd like to join me. So I'm going to be joined on stage by Lorena Nachi, who was here yesterday, and by Alejandro Lopez. My brain's just shut down. Lopez Valdez. One way or the other, I'm also going to give you a microphone and the power of speech. And for those of you that were here yesterday, I explained that in this little session in the morning, what we tried to do is a thing that we nicknamed the Neuroscience Chorus, a little bit like a Greek chorus of neuroscientists who pop up. And so I have people with different disciplines within neuroscience. Alejandro, you're a neural engineer primarily. So the mechanics of how do we understand what's going on. And then Lorena, you've got such a broad scope of areas, really. But really looking at what are the mechanics? How do we burrow down into the way that the brain works? So as we face the start of the day of connection, from your perspective, what's interesting about connection? What do you think about in the world of neuroscience or neural engineering? Who wants to go first?
I think connection is all around us. We are social animals from the beginning. And to be able to understand how we connect with our environment is actually very powerful. A lot of the times when we do research in neuroscience, we deal with individual brains, and we are looking at either EEG or functional magnetic resonance in a little booth, and we have one participant, and we're asking one participant some questions, and then we try to disentangle how the brain is working. That helps us understand how the brain works, but doesn't help us understand how the brain interacts with the environment. So one of the things that I'm interested in is looking at that, interacting minds. So most of my research involves having people interacting while we actually probe how brain activity is developing and see if there is a connection being formed. What we see is that when people work in groups towards a common goal, there is some brain pattern synchronization, which is fantastic. You heard it yesterday from Ian Robertson about people who synchronize their brain activity as they listen to music. Yeah. But we see that connection break down when they're doing individual tasks, even if they're in the same room. So it's very interesting to know how connections actually emerge. And they can tell us something about when people are struggling with those connections. Yesterday, we were talking about attention. If you paid attention, there were a couple of keywords there. One was motivation, one was engagement. What happens when attention becomes so difficult to have, to do, that you lose the motivation and you hence disengage? Yeah. And social disengagement can have very negative psychosocial health outcomes. It can lead to mental health issues, can then lead to isolation, can lead to loneliness, and further on, maybe even dementia. So this is why connection is important, and to be able to find different mechanisms to measure, monitor, and tell people whether they're connected or not could be very interesting.
And Lorena?
Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree with that. And, taking off from the idea that connection is really important for us as social animals, and being able to really find a groove through which we are working productively with others. Some of the way in which connection strikes me as being really relevant to this conversation is also how connection actually helps to protect the brain. Okay. From a biomedical perspective, when we look at how we can age healthily, how we can live and optimize brain health through the lifespan, what some of the work in my group is showing that actually connection is really, really important for maintaining brain health. So when we measure the brain structure, brain function connectivity, the way that people think, what we see is that, independently of other factors that we know are involved in cognitive reserve or in how much strength and resilience our brain has to sustain insult and pathology, independently of other things, connection through social interaction, through stimulating activities with other people. So a number of avocational activities that we do in our free time is really wonderful for protecting brain health, especially of individuals who have a family history of dementia or who have a genetic risk of dementia. And we find that the people that are more connected, more engaged in this connection-based stimulating activities have better brain health. So yeah, it's a good thing all around.
So turning up to Creative Brain Week, having conversations about creative brain and talking to people is actually good for your brain.
Absolutely. I wish it was Creative Brain Week every day.
I'd be tired. My Brain Robbie, I think. So one of the things they talked about in India and Brisbane is what is brain health? How does it apply? And upstairs you can see a piece that Eleanor will talk about later, and Agustin and Alejandra will talk about later, called My Brain Robbie, which is trying to tease out some of those things. And Alejandro, what would you...
have you seen the video of My Brain Robbie already? No, it was there since the first day, I think, and you'll hear all about it today. But it's a very clever way of disentangling 8 different factors that may play a key role in protecting brain health, promoting brain health. And one of the factors there is social connections, social activities. Be social, connect. And that really echoes a little bit the ethos of today's theme. So it's not an isolated protective factor. It's part of a bundle of things. And if we're able to use simple schemes like My Brain Robbie, for example, to understand and to explain to young minds how to better protect their brain health, it's also important that we understand ourselves as adults, what those 8 elements are and how to make best use of it. There are particular vulnerable populations that struggle making connections, or that tend to disengage from connection. There's a whole old psychology theory on social disengagement, that as we age, we tend to isolate ourselves, and that's not really what we're finding anymore.
Great.
But there are vulnerable populations that suffer from hearing loss, for example, that find it very difficult to engage in a social situation. So how can we protect those populations? How can we help them understand that there are different strategies to make social connections that can help them have a positive knock-on effect on the brain health outcomes?
And we have something like 8 to 10-year-olds turning up at about 11:30 to give us lectures on brain health. So I'm really looking forward to the chaos that will descend. Chaos is good. We're talking a bit about aging. We're talking a bit about change. We talked a little bit about that yesterday. Old age isn't just deterioration, though, is it? It's change. It's broader than that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Can I just say...
There's many ways to go into that. But
yeah. Can I just say, one of the things about this is neuroscientists as a genre, as a group of people, spend a lot of time creating very clear presentations that they give. And so doing this is not the natural habitat. And so me asking questions on the hoof is not quite fair. Go on. What were you going to say?
Well, what strikes me about connection and what you were saying about my brain, Robbie, is sort of the other side of connection that is natural. Obviously, we talked about how people, when they work together, when they share political views, when they share a common purpose, they synchronize their mechanisms, their biological mechanisms that sustain that. But often connection is not natural. There are silos, there are geographical divides. And so what I love about my brain, Robbie, and I'd love to see what the 8 to 10-year-olds tell you later, is, what I find in my work is that with younger age groups, the word brain health might not mean much. I mean, even for school teachers, the word brain health might not mean much. So I think that kind of building that disconnection across age groups and making brain health relevant to the people that really are developing and really have very little understanding of it. I think that is a really powerful outcome of this week, in that sense of connection that otherwise would happen. I think that's a really important goal of what's happening here.
There was an observation yesterday about a tension between generations. So one of the things that didn't come up very much yesterday was about ageism, was about that exclusion of people simply by age default and how that works. I live in Ireland, I'm 58. I'm technically just a bit over middle age, but if I fly to South Africa, I instantly become an old man the minute I get off the plane. So that stuff is not, insignificant. I'm going to ask you a last question about anything else that you'd like to add on to connection. And while you're thinking, so what we're going to do in a minute is take a 5-10 minute break while we just do a quick turnover. We will then have the extraordinary Marshmallow Laser Feast. We will have Eleanor and Agustin and Alejandro talking about the journey of My Brain Robbie. And then at 12 until 1, we will have these breakout groups, I suppose, which we call the Living Labs. So back here, the lovely Sumaya, who started yesterday this project that will develop over the next 2 days called Breaks and Joins. What must we break? What is broken and we need to let go? What can we mend? Outside, though, it'll be around the corner today because it got very large, what he called the flarky hole of dementia. So Mike Hanrahan asking, what is the sound of dementia? We know what it looks like. What's it sound like? Upstairs today will be a chance to experience Marshmallow Laser Feast's work. And next to that will be Trudy Meehan, who is a positive psychologist and wants to know how do we feel love in the body? How does that work? What does that look like? What does that feel like? How do we visualize it? So busy day. Last thoughts on connection, either of you?
I would say that connection cannot be prescribed. Connection has to be organic and needs to be explored. And I think Creative Brain Week, the arts, the mixture with science has allowed that exploration to happen. I would encourage everyone to explore what ticks and what makes them connect to the people around you and keep exploring until you find it, because we all need it.
Yes, exactly. And while it cannot be prescribed, I think connection is also magical in the way that it can happen in the unlikely places. So, when you put together Creative Brain Week for the first year, you didn't imagine all the ways in which things would connect by bringing a whole bunch of people from different disciplines together in the mix and giving them a chance to connect. So I think, to me, that's really, really important. I was thinking when I was hearing about the different Creative Brain Weeks across the world, how, that just having that platform, that giving people that opportunity to think about it creates so much potential that otherwise wouldn't be there. And sometimes I think about, the power of weak connections. So weak social connections are the more superficial connections. People we meet at the water cooler are the people we meet at the bus station, and how much can come of that. And we saw how devastating it was to lose that web of interconnectedness during COVID. Yeah. So I feel like we're just starting to learn really about connections and how much, the potential for magic and the potential to create connection when we open ourselves up for that. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. And it echoes for me something that Susan Magsaman said when she joined yesterday, which was about the need for spaces where we're not quite sure what's going to emerge from them. Safe and brave spaces, places for emergent potential. And I think that's hopefully what we're trying to do here. So I would like to thank the two of you. I would like to thank you for joining us for this early morning coffee wake-up session. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing what you're reflecting on at the end of the day. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.